you?
I appreciate you, Rob. I'm Joey Guarascio. I'm the director at FAU. I oversee development of football, strength and conditioning, and performance. Today, we're going to talk about use of undulation and training qualities to fight a combination of maladaptation. So, a really long title right there, a lot of big words, but essentially, we're just going to talk about the why, when, how, on how we drive athletic performance. Right? You heard it from Cam Josh earlier today. Every time I get on the phone with Johnny Parker, and I say that's a great idea, he always hits me with this line. It's I'm the creator of nothing and the borrower of everything. So again, a ton of people have contributed to how I developed my philosophy and how I've come up as a strength coach, either with direct communication with me or from afar. If I didn't put you up here, again, I'm sorry for that. But again, I just have to acknowledge everyone that's helped me kind of come to the model that I have and we implemented at FAU. All right, moving on, right? So the evaluation of the strength coach, right? So 2020, the strength coach has definitely evolved, right? And like Coach Storm said earlier, we became the Swiss Army knife, right? So we're the culture builder, we're the disciplinary, the juice guy, toughness developer, the psychologist, especially in today's age with mental health illness issues. We're the nutritionist. We don't have a nutritionist at FAU, so we had to take that over, all right? But I'm going to pose this question: are we keeping the main thing the main thing? All right. Are we keeping the main thing the main thing? I think a lot of coaches, they lean more on the art side versus the science side nowadays where, are we driving, again, we have to ask this question: do you as a coach systematically drive athletic qualities that enhance sports performance, right? We could still get buy-in. We could still develop toughness. We could still have that accountability and that attention to detail. But are you driving those qualities that are going to make them a better athlete in whatever sport that they play? And again, so for me, what does that look like? I want to simplify it, right? I want the 10,000 foot view, right? What do good athletes have? And what made Forrest Gump an All-American, right? As funny as that is. And it's, you look at all of these qualities and all the scientific literature, and it's really 5 things. It's speed, it's balance, it's power, it's strength, and it's the ability to repeat any of those other qualities over and over and over again, right? So are we developing these? Right? Because this is very important to understand and very important that we're testing these to see that we're progressing and driving performance long term. All right. So what is a strength coach, right? And again, we're going to get into the why first. And the strength coach are managers of stress and recovery, bottom line, right? So at the end of the day, we're looking to apply a stimulus that's going to elect a specific stress to the body, and then we're going to provide a recovery window for that body to turn around and adapt to the stress that we previously have given it, right? So I am no expert, I am no physiologist, and I am no neurologist. So again, I'm gonna let some of the experts speak for me. We go back all the way, I believe it's, I don't want to put a date on it because I don't know off the top of my head, but you look at George Selvey and the introduction of the GAS, the general adaptation syndrome model, right? And we apply, again, a stress, your body has time to recover from it, and then essentially you get a super compensation or you're above your previous prepared level that you previously were, right? What does this mean and how does it affect training, right? So again, because he did this just in general stress. So physical training is required to enhance physical capacities. Adequate periods of recovery are required in order for sufficient regeneration to occur. So again, stress is applied and then you need a specific sufficient regeneration period to occur. Again, Bruce Snyder, who has probably one of the most influence on me is from a programming standpoint. That's actually me sitting in the front row right there with the No Days Off shirt, back to my old Miss days. Me and Paul Jackson, we had the pleasure of hearing him speak. And he advocated and made this an extreme of importance. The balance between work and rest is the most fundamental critical training variable there is, okay? Again, another extremely successful practitioner in our field, Derek Hansen, right? And this is something that I took off his website. So cumulative effect of well-timed stress allows us to adapt and improve over time, right? So again, that's the idea, is we continually get better and we apply this over time so that, again, we can increase all these athletic abilities. All right, more science, right? The fitness fatigue model, and I'm gonna read the paraphrase version. This implies that strategies that maximize fitness and minimize fatigue will have the greatest potential, okay, to optimize athletes' preparedness, okay? So again, we're trying to give a stress and then allow this fatigue to subside and for us to adapt to this stress, all right? Right, and then again, is stress created equal, right? So, we get to ask this question, right? We're talking about stress. Stress is not created equal, right? Specific stimuli will have different fatigue responses, okay? You know, all stress is not created equal, continue. So again, the fitness, so I'm gonna paraphrase it. So implying that the after effects of fitness and fatigue are exercise specific. All right, so again, they're stress, a specific stress, a specific exercise, a specific velocity is gonna have a different adaptation and a different stimulus to the body, all right, versus thinking that, okay, it's just all one thing. And again, you can pose the question is this, is tired is tired, correct? No, that's not correct, right? We all know from the previous slides that it's not correct. All right, so moving into fatigue. All right, because if we understand, all right, stress is important. Okay, we have to elect stress, but now how do we, what does that fatigue mean? What are the recovery periods for these? And we have to understand this. Okay, so again, what's the definition of fatigue? And it's one's ability to maintain the desired intensity or the body's ability to replenish energy stored for a given rate of work. All right, and we're going to dumb it down and just break it into basically two specific departments that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about central fatigue versus peripheral fatigue. All right, so again, I am no neurologist and I am no physiologist, so I'm going to make this as dumb as possible because this is how I understand it. All right, central fatigue starts with the brain, moves down into the spinal cord, into the motor neuron, okay? And then from there, that's where that peripheral fatigue takes over. It goes to the muscle fiber and then into the muscle cell itself, all right? What is it? What is central fatigue, right? So central fatigue is essentially the body's ability for the brain to communicate with your muscles. All right, a decreased ability of the brain to communicate with the muscles. All right, so again, what does this look like? This looks like a lack of coordination. This looks like decreased force output. This looks like decreased rate of force output. All right, you know, what are some physical traits that you'll see? Is you'll see lack of sleep. You'll see moodiness. Okay, and then again, you'll see just a generally tired athlete. You know, and then again, the most important thing to take out of this is, again, what are the windows of recovery for this, right? So you look at it, and the minimal window is 48 to 72 hours. And, you know, Charles Poliquin always talked about, you know, if you did an extremely heavy deadlift session, it could take you up to 10 days to recover from a really neurally taxing workout, right? And then the peripheral fatigue, right? So again, more localized, more inside the muscle fibers itself. You talk about energy stores, you talk about glycogen replenishment, you talk about ATP stores, and again, because it's localized and because, again, there's less moving parts with this, you know, you can recover at a faster rate. So you're looking at anywhere from 12 to 24 hours of recovery based on, you know, proper volume and intensity, okay? And the take home on all this is very simple, is specific training methods have global effect, all right? And other training effects or other training methods are more local in nature, all right? So again, advocating towards central or neural training is going to have the biggest effect on the human body, period, bottom line, all right? So we have to take priority in planning for it, okay? Jaworski, again, hits on this where he states the central nervous system is of paramount importance in the exertion and development of muscular strength, all right? So again, all of those qualities, those athletic qualities that we've touched on earlier on are affected by the neural training and the central nervous system itself. So we have to make a priority in how we train. All right, so again, neural training. What are the take homes with again the performance benefits of neural training? So you got intramuscular coordination. All right, so basically you're maximizing your motor units to produce greater force per muscle fiber. All right, so I can produce greater amounts of force. And then you look at intermuscular coordination, and essentially all it is being more coordinated. All right, it's your muscles being able to talk to each other and work synergistically. Again, in a more coordinated, smooth pattern, right? I've never seen I've never seen a world-class thrower that looked uncoordinated in the circle, or Usain Bolt, who's a world record holder in the 100 meter. When you watch him, it looks like poetry in motion. Again, this is because he's extremely neurally trained, and again, there's genetic factors that play into that too. Give him a high ceiling, but again, more force output, more coordination. Why is coordination important? Right, and Franz Bosch touched on this, and again, it plays right back into the metaphor of the thrower or of Usain Bolt. Is coordination at the high degree of mastery is the most performance limiting factor in almost all explosive sports, right? Again, you look at people that are extremely explosive or extremely successful in single explosive sports, right? They have this smoothness to them, all right? They get defined as almost being, again, just extremely smooth, all right? How do we, and it boils down to this, we understand that central fatigue, taxing the nervous system, training the nervous system is important. How do we how do we go about it? And it comes down to the right prescription, right? And this is this metaphor right here. And it's essentially, you know, if I got a headache and I take one ibuprofen, the headache's not going to go away. But if I take 15 ibuprofen, I'll die. So again, it's figuring out what is the right dose, how much of that dose do I need, and then how to prescribe that dose, right? And how do we do that? And it boils down to this. It boils down to principle-based programming. Okay, it boils down to principle-based programming, leaning on the science aspect of this field and getting these principles, right? And what do these principles revolve around? And essentially, principles revolve around variability. Okay, they revolve around variability. All right, and I got this out of Paul Gamble's Comprehensive Strength and Conditioning book. And it's how you manipulate variables in training that's going to allow you to, again, get the right prescription necessary to drive athletic qualities. All right. And again, variability, I want to make this very clear. Variability does not mean random. It's not like we're playing bingo where you sit around and you have a whole bunch of numbers and you just pray to God that that number gets called and you go. No, it's a plan. Again, it's a plan. And we'll get into how we plan that here at FAU. All right. And why is it important to have these training variables and to get the right prescriptions, right? Because we want to avoid maladaptation, right? We want to avoid negative training effects. We want to avoid overtraining or, you know, even in worst case scenarios, catastrophic injuries. Okay. What also we want to avoid accommodation. Okay. We want to avoid plateauing. We want progress to continue over periods of time. We don't want to stagnate. We don't want to have that athlete not get stronger. You know, the worst thing in the world is having an athlete in his junior year and you've had him 3 years and he asks you, why haven't I gotten stronger or faster? Right? We want to continually drive this. And the only way to drive to avoid the accommodation and drive performance is to, again, constantly drive these performance metrics, right? We want to avoid the point of diminishing return, right? As you get closer, and I got this from the book Linchpin, which is a phenomenal book. But essentially, we want to avoid, you know, we could get as close to perfect as possible, right? So say you get to this night, it takes you 3 years to get to 98% almost perfect, right? Well, it's going to take you another 3 years to get that extra 2%. So again, are we spending too much time in specific areas when there's other areas of necessity that need to be addressed? All right, so again, and this is going to help through, again, the training variabilities and using practical or principle-based programming, okay? And we've all heard it, you know, football coaches say it all the time. You know, I got an argument with a coach, I'm not going to say who it is, but about the 40-yard dash. I said, why do you like it? And he said, because we've always done it this way, right? And if you do the same program continuous over a period of time, negative training adaptations won't occur. And that's the bottom line. Performance increases they'll be non-existent, all right? And then you'll have a whole bunch of athletes asking why I'm not getting better. And you know, the easiest way to have an athlete buy in is for them to see continued progress. Okay, so I pose this question, all right? Are you training what you think you're training? Okay, all right, and it boils down to this. If you try to chase 2 reps, you catch none, all right? So are you consolidating stresses? Are you like a sniper? And do you have a plan for the day, the week, the month, the year? And are you consolidating these stressors and then applying the appropriate stress to get those adaptations that you're chasing, all right? And then are you testing to make sure that they're continually progressing, all right? Again, one thing I want to touch on is don't be married to exercises. So before we get into like how we do things and all this, don't be married to exercises, okay? Don't be married to exercise. I see young coaches make this, I'm a young coach too, but I see other coaches make this mistake all the time. They write a program based around their favorite exercises, instead of what we really should be doing is chasing adaptations. All right, chasing adaptations. Apply the stress to get the adaptation that you really want out of that training, okay? Right, and at the end of the day, we all abide by this specific rule, which is, again, the SAD principle, specific adaptation, imposed demand. Just like we stated earlier, the research is that there's specific stimuli that elect specific adaptations. All right, so again, if you say you're a speed power program, do you have the adequate reps and sets and intensities dictated to elect those responses, right? If you say, oh, we're just going to hang our hat on being extremely strong and being in really good shape, are you have the appropriate volume? Do you have the appropriate intensities? Are you matching what you say you're training? Okay, and that's the biggest thing, all right? And how do we do this, all right? And you hear people go and have thousands of different methods and all this and ideas about periodization, but to me, periodization basically is just it's the study of planning, you know, and I really like this definition that I found from Comfort and Turner, and a training plan whereby peak performance is brought about through the potentiation of biomotor abilities and the management of fatigue and accommodation. So again, you know, are your athletic qualities, is your training compatible? Is it complex? Are they building off of each other? Are specific athletic qualities driving other athletic qualities? Are you managing fatigue? Are you testing that you're managing fatigue? Are you avoiding accommodation? And I think these are all questions, you know, when we self-audit ourselves, that are extremely important to ask, right? Let's not reinvent the wheel. You know, I talked to Al Vermeil last week, and you know, Bob, it's kind of funny that Bob said it, you know, because Al said it too on the phone, and he's like, you know, tell me what they call it now, and I'll tell you what we called it. You know, and it's this idea of, as we progress from off season to preseason, we're going to go from simple to complex. We're going to go from general to specific, right? And we're going to lean on, you know, these athletic qualities that we deem extremely important, whatever you call them, as far as your KPIs for whatever sport. But at the end of the day, you know, can you build work capacity, right? Because if you don't have work capacity and your athletes can't withstand your workouts, they're not going to adapt and thrive, right? Can we build up a foundational level of strength, right? Relative body strength, or just absolute strength, right? Are we powerful? Okay, show me a sport that doesn't involve power and where power is not important, right? Can we be bouncy, right? Do we have bouncy athletes? And then again, the speed, which is, you know, again, to me is number one on my pyramid and number one on Al Vermeil's pyramid. Like, can we outrun people? You know, can our big guys be fast? Can our small guys be fast? If you got, you know, court athletes, right? You know, one thing that's impressive about LeBron James is he's extremely fast for how big he is, right? So again, speed. Can you increase your speed? Right? And how do we go about this, right? Yeah, and you know, we use a undulated model, all right? And it's a fancy way of saying we use a smooth up and down. You know, the definition of it is move or go with a smooth up and down motion. But essentially, all it is training volume and intensities are varied each workout, each week, and each month. Again, and making the stress of the body consistently varied, so that we can plan in those recovery periods, and then we also can potentiate further workouts down the week, down the weeks, or down the day, from day to day, from week to week, from month to month. All right, and again, you can see that wave-like pattern. You know, and again, what does it also allow us to do? You know, this method, it allows us to again train multiple athletic qualities at one time while emphasizing one or two, but we're able to train other qualities. Why is this significant? Because again, it provides us with the ability for us to not detrain other abilities that we've driven and taken the time to drive, right? And you know, it goes along with what Charlie Francis had a ton of success with, which is his vertical integration model. Again, so we're going to train work capacity, strength, explosive strength, reactive strength, and speed all the way throughout the training year. But we're going to vary the amount of volume prescribed to those qualities as we deem whatever the emphasis of our month is, okay? And again, it helps us build in recovery. It helps us build in recovery, and it essentially eliminates overtraining and plateaus, right? And what you can see here is I got this gigantic graph and breakdown of my mesocycle and how I prescribe my reps, which we'll get into right here. But we're going to talk about how we undulate our mesocycle, right? So I'm going to give you the example. Our emphasis in this mesocycle was strength and explosive strength. Okay? So again, I'll get into lifting, right? So my maximum volume for rep prescription would be 1,000 reps, okay? I use a bastardized version of what you see in the system. I count reps on all my main exercises, and I start counting at above 60%, all right? So again, so the maximum amount I use was 1,000, all right? Because again, this is a earlier block. I'm only gonna use 80%, all right? That's a typo right there, but I'm only using 80% of my maximum volume, all right? So again, how do I break that up to get this wave-like pattern, right? So again, I want my high weeks to be high. So again, you see the first week, we're at 85%, we're at 240 reps. All right, we're at 30% of my maximum volume, okay, 30% of my maximum volume for that entire month. Moving into week 2, okay, it's a low week, all right? We're at 70%, we're at 35% of our total volume, which is 280 reps. Okay, so again, we're still able to drive strength and we're still able to work. It is not a deload, But essentially, because of the decrease in intensity, okay, we're again, it's not as taxing neurally as the first week is. And you move into week 3, and you can see again this inverse relationship between intensity and volume. Week 3, we get into there, and we're working again at 90% at 200 total reps. Okay, and that's 25% of our volume. And then what we get into is our deload on week 4. Okay, and something I took away from Coach Jackson when I was with him, and then Bruce Schexnayder kind of just reinforced both of our philosophies on it, is that on deload weeks we don't back away from intensity, right? We know, and everyone's been putting up the residual effect chart because we're all trying to scare our kids into running and doing all these things during this quarantine period. But we also know that it takes an extremely long time to drive speed and power. And then the residual effect for speed is 5 days plus or minus 3 before you start to see a decrement in that speed, right? So again, the idea is I want to give them just a taste of that neural stimulus, specifically in the weight room, to make sure that we don't detrain in that specific ability. All right, but the volume is minimal, okay? And then disclaimer, with all of these reps and numbers, I want to be as close to them as possible, but I'm not going to kill myself if I'm 10 off or 15 off. I just want to be in the ballpark of these figures, all right? So again, and then you can see in the chart, the undulation, the wave-like pattern of the intensity, and then of the volume, and then the inverse relationship between the intensity and the volume as you go through these 4 weeks. Moving on, all right, and this graph came from Ken Clark and Peter Wayans, their research, and I thought it was phenomenal. And they essentially, what they did was they turned around and analyzed everyone that ran at the combine, and what they found is that they all reach specific velocities at almost similar rates. Okay, so for us, why was this important? Because they essentially put a percentage on their velocity. So for me, my idea with this was, and I don't know, it just simplifies it for me, and it's the way I do it, is essentially to prescribe an intensity for sprinting. Okay, I use 100% of their maximum velocity as it would be related to as 100% of the 1 rep max on the squat. All right, and then I prescribe the adequate distance to match whatever intensity that I have planned for that week. So again, my top mile per hour achieved equals 100% of my average my top mile per hour achieved at 30 yards. And what we found just from practical experience, and then obviously this chart reinforced it, is majority of our athletes reach top speed at 30 yards. So again, if that's my 100, I'm looking at anything above 30 yards is probably super maximal, okay, versus anything under 30 yards is going to be sub-maximal in just for total velocity, okay? And how is this applicable, right? So how do I apply this? Okay, so again, we apply distances, all right, that correlate to that percentage. So if I'm at 85 intensity, just like I was with lifting, because I want to consolidate my stresses and I want to match the training theme of the month, okay? If I'm at 85%, we're going to be at a distance of 15 yards because that, again, correlates to 85% of my maximum velocity is obtained at 15 yards, all right? So again, and then I'm going to have the adequate volume. So I'm applying 30% of my total sprint volume. I'll never go over 2,000 yards in a mesocycle, 4-week block on sprint work. And then I'll never go over 600 yards in a microcycle for sprint work, right? Those are just kind of like my guidelines. So we're using 80%. We have 1,600 yards in this block, all right? And we're applying 30% of that total 1,600 in this first week at an intensity of 85. So majority of the velocity distances we'll be working at is 15 yards. Second week, again, we increase the yardage, and there's that inverse relationship, and we're at 10 yards at 560 yards. And you see week 3, we move it to 20 yards, okay? So again, we're at probably approximately 90% intensity or 90% of our top speed, and we're applying 400 yards. And then again, week 4, because there's such a decrease in our volume, I'm able to go up to 95%. And then as we move through the training year, again, those intensities increase, but you can see the average distance over that first 4 weeks. First 4 weeks is 17.5, and our average intensity is 87.5. So again, matching that idea of explosive strength and absolute strength, right? I'm able to apply more volume in the weight room because our speed work is at these specific distances and at this specific volume, right? I stole this chart from Flanagan. It was out of a push band article, and I thought this was excellent. But again, how do I gauge intensities, apply metrics? And I use Mike Young's mechanical model which I had the ability actually when Boo spoke, Mike Young spoke on this topic specifically on how to gauge intensity of plyometrics and its impact velocity, collision time, and distribution of loaded impact. So basically, how fast are you going? How jarring is it? And then essentially, is it one leg or two leg, right? So again, to me, in my mind, I classify these exercises as far as from an intensity standpoint as like, okay, like a consecutive single leg bound is probably 100%. A single leg depth jump, super maximal to your vertical jump would be probably, again, super maximal above 100%. So again, that's how we prescribe that intensity. And it's important because, again, we're trying to consolidate stressors. We're trying to consolidate stressors. So we look at it, right, and you see week 1, right? So we're not going to go above 200 jumps in a mesocycle. All right, that's just my rule of thumb from practical experience and the athletes I've worked with. We're going to use 80% of that. So we have 160 total jumps distributed over 4 weeks. All right, so what does that look like? So week 1, again, 30%. All right, we're going to get 48 touches at an intensity of 85. So again, if the intensity is 85, I have to make sure my exercise catalog matches that 85%. So for me, that's bilateral consecutive jumps. Okay, and again, I want to make sure something that Matt did a phenomenal job touching on in his presentation last night is we want to make sure it's vector specific. Okay, that it's vector specific. That if we're working acceleration on Monday, that is more horizontal in nature, and if we're working more maximal velocity work on Thursday, that is more vertical in nature. Okay, so again, vector specific is extremely important. So again, my exercise selection is going to be, and my catalog is going to come from bilateral consecutive jumps, right? I get into the next week where I drop the intensity down to 80, and we're going bilateral jumps, okay, and they're non-consecutive, all right? They're non-consecutive. We're going to get 56 touches. I'm allowed to get more touches because, again, the intensity and the volume, that inverse relationship that occurs with it. Then the next following week, we're going to get 40 touches, all right? We're going to get 40 touches, and we're going to be at an intensity of 90%. So using this 90%, my exercise catalog for 90%, we're going to get into bounds, and we're going to get into depth jumps. Okay, so again, bounds, alternating bounds, and then bilateral depth jumps. And then week 4, we usually test either a broad jump or a 3 broad to make sure that those are kind of like our benchmarks to make sure that, again, we're continually progressing. But then you can see, again, we talk about consolidating stresses and making our high weeks be high and our low weeks be low. But we're averaging an intensity of 87.5% over 4 weeks, similar to what we did on our speed work, similar to what we did on our lifting. Okay. And then you get into conditioning, and again, conditioning is support to me. All right. So, I follow the old adage, and we'll get into that chart, but we're going to be under 70% of our maximum velocity when we condition. We're going to abide by the work to rest ratios that are shown in the sport, whatever sport it may be. Okay. I'll never go over 12,000 yards in a mesocycle. Okay. And then you see we're using 80% of that. All right. And then we distribute this over 2 days. Okay. So again, in the first week, we got 30% distribution. So we got approximately 2,800 yards. The second week, 35. We're approximately 3,400 yards, and then 2,400 yards, and then essentially 1,000 on the deload week, allowing that body to recover. All right. So moving on into our microcycles. Okay? And again, if I look at it like this: is I steal and borrow from all these extremely smart coaches because they've spent the time to figure out pros and cons of all of these different training modalities. Why should I change what they've made extremely important and extremely successful, right? So again, I look at Charlie Francis, and we integrate his high-low integration model, and why do we do that? Because again, just like with our weeks, with our days, we want to make sure that they're compatible and they build off each other, that workouts potentiate each other as you move through that training week. Also, we want to build in fatigue management into the schedule, right? We want our high days to be extremely high, right? Something that Tim Karen that spoke on recently with us when he did a staff education was, he wants to maximize his ROI, which is his return on investment. Make those high days high, right? Because we know that, we all like to say, effective minimal dose and all this stuff. Coaches don't care about effective minimal dose, right? They're going to put high amounts of stress on these athletes no matter what. So again, let's make sure that our high days are high and our low days are low, so we can get those right adaptation and recovery windows built in, right? And again, consolidating stress, and this is a quote from Boo, and it's kind of comical, but it's funny. Is that he said, I drink water to hydrate, and I drink whiskey to get drunk. And again, it's this idea of staying out of this middle zone, this murky zone where, again, is it a strong enough stress to elect the response you want? is it a neural stress that is it going to drive that adaptation, or is it, barely a neural stress and it's going to affect your recovery for the upcoming days, right? And then what does it look like? Okay, so again, this undulated micro. So again, you saw how we broke down our weeks. So this is a week 1 right here. So we're at average intensity at 85%. Okay, for our main exercises, and then for all of our sprinting and plyometric work. All right. So then how is it broken down? Okay, so Monday, something I stole from Coach Jackson. He started calling, instead of calling it high-low, he started calling it performance support days. And that's just something that, when you use this verbiage with athletes, I think it was extremely effective for them to understand what the purpose of the day was. And it kind of locked them into what we were doing. But you can see performance days. Okay, so Monday being more accelerative in nature. Okay, more accelerative in nature. And Thursday being more maximum velocity in nature / I would say rate of force development, starting strength in that specific day. All right, so you can see again how we break it up. So again, Thursday is my highest day in the week, and that comes from trial and error. We used to make Monday our highest day, and it was this idea, hey, guess what? They're coming off the weekend and they're going to be fresh. They got 2 days. A lot of guys, they came in and they got extra work on Saturday and recovery and all this. But we all know, we started testing throughout the summer, and, we tested on Monday, and, our numbers were they weren't what you thought they were going to be. So I'm like, wow, we're going to do really good this Monday. And then, you come to find out that there was a really big party on Saturday, and then there was a really, really good party at a pool on Sunday, and they come in on Monday and just kind of, they ain't putting out like the way you want them to. So what we did was we switched that Monday and that Thursday. We made Thursday that high stress, allowing them to get into a rhythm in the week, allowing them to again, get into that training rhythm, get the proper hydration and nutrients and supplements, and kind of get back into that mind frame of, okay, this is a work week. And that's when we started testing on Thursday. And that's when we made Thursday our high day. But Monday being accelerative in nature, okay? So again, you can see we got resistive sprints, 15-yard sprints to match what we were talking about previously in what the emphasis of the week and the month was. All right, we got a trap bar complex, all right, which again is accelerative in nature. We'll do full cleans from the ground. So again, the exercise sequence, again, it goes from fast and essentially fast and light to moderate and fast to heavy. And again, we're trying to drive intent and speed even on our strength lifts. So again, I say moderately fast, and then high intensity and demanding. And then you can see we fill in the cracks with some auxiliary work that we feel is specific to the sport or specific to the population of athlete that we work with. Then you move into our support day on Tuesday. All right, and again, I told you we abide by the demands of the sport. So again, we're doing 30-yard shuttles, which is 5 back, 10 back. We're doing 1,100 yards of that, because again, this is Friday is going to be the harder conditioning day. And then you get into, Tuesday's lift, and we talk about, all right, what does this look like? And again, it's primarily upper body, and it really is only upper body. And the neural stimulus outside of bench is essentially not much. Okay, it's not much. We train a collision sport, so we got to have some body armor. So there has to be some functional hypertrophy, and there has to be, some of those upper body muscles have to be strong, especially as you get closer to the ball in football, right? And then you get into Thursday, like we talked about. So resistive sprint, in this first week block, and that could be changed out for some maximum velocity mechanic drills, such as wickets. And then you got your 15-yard sprints where we time them, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But then again, you talk about faster movement. So again, you got power clean at a lower intensity. You got split jerk, which is an extremely high velocity movement, right? So working more of that speed strength versus that accelerated strength. And then you got squat at a higher, at a specific volume, right? 30% of the entire day's volume is dedicated to squat and deadlift. So again, you can see that the emphasis on that day is going to be the power and that absolute strength development. And then again, we filled in the cracks with accessory exercises that we think are going to help that population of athlete or specific to the sport. And then that Friday, again, repeat sprints, because to me, repeat trainability is one of the main indicators of success in football. So we want to get them into it early on and build off it and build up their volume tolerance as we progress through the annual year. And then you get into their upper body workout Friday, after their run, and essentially it's very, by that point in time they're waxed, they're taxed, they're hurting. So again, we can't make that Friday workout crazy because they really just don't have much in the tank, right? So again, how do we classify these exercises? And essentially, we look at motor unit involvement, right? So the more motor unit involvement, the more neural it's going to be. So anything that is heavy and fast, multi-joint, and high levels of coordination are going to be higher up on that scale of motor unit and recruitment, and then they're going to be more neurally taxing, versus isolated exercises or upper body exercises. They're going to be more on the other scale of peripheral, right? And I know this is not an exact chart, but it is a good baseline, because you could argue like a deadlift has higher more motor unit. I know guys are going to argue a bench press has more motor unit recruitment. I get that, but again, it's just a good guide, and all of this is just a good guide, because you have to adapt it to whatever you do. All right. So again, moving on, classification of exercise, central versus peripheral. So you can see as the velocities increase or the distance increases, specifically as it's for sprints or for your plyometric exercises, the neural demand gets higher and higher and higher, right? So as soon as you start chaining together jumps, as soon as you start getting past that 20 to 30 yard mark into flying tens, as soon as you start getting into bounds at 40 yards, you're going to see a high neural demand, okay, an extremely high neural demand, right? So again, that's another way how we classify it. And then also how we also classify our running, right? It's driven by intent. So if we're at 95, and this is a little bit different than how I gauge and prescribe the running distances, right? We're looking at, if you time someone there in that 95 to 100% of that best time, then you're driving, you have that neural intent to it. You're driving that adaptation you want, and you're going to have to prescribe, again, those appropriate rest times that go along with it. So again, like if I go out there and I run a 20 and it's 97% of my best, like, I'm going to need a solid 72 hours to recover from that, right? Because again, I'm trying to give maximum intent to that right there. And we want to make sure, again, we have the right prescription of volume along with these intensities, because you can't increase volume and intensity at the same rate. You can't. There has to be this inverse relationship, or else you get maladaptation, and again, you get people overtraining and possibly getting hurt, right? Then you look at that medium zone is what we try to avoid, okay? Because again, it's just as taxing. It's just as taxing as being at that 90 to 95%, but at the same time, you're not getting the same stimulus and the same adaptation that you would if you were above that 90%. So again, that goes into, how do you elect in training the maximal, the highest level of intent? And you do that through racing, you do that through timing things, you do that through measuring things, you do that through giving them objective feedback, you give that through how you coach and your mannerisms. So again, I think it's extremely important to stay out of that murky water, right? And make sure that you stay in those nice Bahamas beaches where you can see straight to the bottom again, and you consolidate those stresses, and you make sure you're hitting the target on what you think you are, right? And then obviously when low's low, I want it to be low. So again, it's below that 75%, and that's our conditioning, and it's restorative in nature. It's restorative in nature, and then also it's preparing them from a tissue stress capacity standpoint of the accumulated volume that they're going to experience in a work week for either camp or spring ball or spring baseball, whatever sport you play, right? And it's the beauty of it is the volume can be high because it's not neurally taxing, so that again, it's not going to affect the next outputs or the next performance day. You might be a little bit sore from it, but from a neural aspect, you'll still have high levels of force output and coordination after, right? And again, you could also classify exercises by using the force velocity curve, right? You surf the curve, and you can see, a lot of people get wrapped up in specific intensity zones. I think velocity plays just as an important part in trying to figure out if something's neural or not, or neurally taxing as just overall force and load. So again, you heard Coach Moffitt talk about it when he was saying that, majority of the time his guys squatted in between 50 and 60%. I think it was like something like 10,900 reps, and they still stayed strong. It's probably because the velocity of those lifts were extremely high. Again, that's a neural activity. So again, I think it was a good representation of why neural training is extremely important and why it should be prioritized. And then what are these guidelines? And it's, I'm not reinventing the wheel again. We're abiding by these proven methods that have been developed over 60 and 70 years. The Russians are really strong, and they're still strong, and they develop strong athletes year after year after year. So maybe we should listen to how they prescribe these again, you know, and just give you a template or a guideline to help you so you don't get off course. And then another way to do it again is monitoring VBT. All right. So again, if I'm working, you know, I know there's specific velocities for each zone. You know, if I'm working accelerated strength, you know, I want it to be 0.5 to 0.7. If I'm working speed strength, or, you know, I want it to be above 0.7, 0.7 to 1. I mean, those probably aren't exact, but if you're in the ballpark, at least you have an idea of the emphasis you're training in. And what I like about VBT is, and I don't have the resources currently to have it here, but I had it at my previous employer. What I like about it is you can maximize training days. So again, if you're working absolute strength and a guy's smashing it, and he's in 90% and he goes and hits it for 0.7, man, let's go up, man. Let's add weight. Let's maximize our training days. You know, I only had 7 weeks before coronavirus hit to train my guys. Like, we don't have a lot of time, so let's maximize these training days. Okay. And then just some take-home messages as far as how I formulate and what questions I ask myself, and what points I make to myself as I do this, as I apply and prescribe in this program, is I want to maximize specific stresses on specific days to ensure adequate recovery windows, right? Because again, it boils back down to, are they recovering from what you're giving them? Okay, so again, if I go speed days 2 days in a row, the second day, the force output of my velocity is going to decrease. And then again, it's going to take me, you know, double the amount of time because I stack 2 of those workouts together to recover from them. All right. So again, can I apply the right stress on the right day at the right time? Right. What modalities are going to give me the most return on investment? Right. And that's where we have to look at and evaluate our population that we're training. All right. If you take over for a guy that was a HIIT program and they've never Olympic lifted, you still need to make them powerful. So maybe you need to look into different modalities, trap bar jumps, med ball tosses, all these different things. If you're an Olympic guy. Like, don't be married to exercises. Okay, be married to the adaptations that exercises provide. All right, and find the greatest return on investment. You know, intensity steers the boat. Again, intensity steers the boat, and that goes hand in hand with the intent. You know, are you at the right intensity that prescribes that is demanded to get that same stimulus that is going to make that body adapt, right? And then, you know, if intensity steers the boat, volume keeps it afloat, or it sinks it. You know. So again, make sure you have the right volume to go along with whatever intensities you have prescribed and whatever goals and emphasis you have for that week. And do the days complement each other. You saw it, you know, recovery is built into my weeks, and then recovery is built into essentially my week itself. You know, and you have to have, again, that complementary training. You have to have that ability to recover from a hard performance day and give them, you know, 72 hours before the next one. And then is there an end goal at the end of the training, right? Whether it be that day, that week, or that month. Like, are you hitting your target? Or again, or you have a shotgun and you're just buckshotting all over the place? Or are you a sniper and you're hitting your target, right? And then what does it look like? Okay, what does it look like? So again, on the left side is our acceleration day. So again, you can see consecutive broad jumps, 4 sets of 5, so 20 reps. Again, the vector specific acceleration is more horizontal in nature. We threw in some run rockets. We're blessed to have that there at FAU. I love them. I think they're awesome. They really increase the efficiency of the resisted work that we've been doing. So again, run rockets, we do four sets of 15. And then, like I said, we're trying to drive intent. It's accelerated day. We're going to put them in different start variations, and we're going to make heats based off their previous time. So again, it's like almost like a track practice. I'll call heat 1 up. 15 guys will hop up, and they think they're the fastest of the group. And we call winners out. We call losers out. There's prizes for it. We have accountability teams. They get points for it. So we really incentivize winning, and we really harp on and make kids feel that when they lose, it's not, that's not it. Again, then we get into kneeling starts. Again, I like, just a different start variation that is really going to emphasize the rhythm and timing of that first extension of their front leg, that first step. I'm not yet too much into the biomechanics of it because Matt did such a phenomenal job last night of doing it, and then Cam Josh hit on it again this morning. So, and then we get in a 3-point start because again, every kid wants to be the fastest kid. What they want to do, they put us in 3-point, coach. Put us in 3 points. We go in 3 points. And then you look at Thursday. All right, more vertical emphasis. All right, we're going to hurdle hops, 4 sets of 5. Again, get some maximum velocity mechanics work with the wicket drills. And the beauty of the wicket drills is you can control the intensity of the wicket drill essentially with the running, with how long the run is. So sometimes we do 5 yards if it's early in the training year. Sometimes we do 10. The idea is, again, the rhythm and coordination, again, that like Cam Josh hit upon, which is that front side mechanics, which is so important, not only just from a speed standpoint, just from an injury prevention standpoint, and that's something that has been used in reducing soft tissue injuries, even for our big guys. We look at how they jog around to and from practice, and it's really increased their running economy, which has been huge for us. And then again, we get them revved up with some races, and then we get some technique work, and we'll waterfall start those. And we'll coach them up, and then we'll get some time. We'll pull those timing gates out. We have 3 Brower laser timing gates, and we get after it. We see who the fastest guys are. And then, so again, moving down, getting into the lift. And again, the lift Monday being more accelerative in nature. So again, like that tri-bar complex. So working on some starting strength, some jumps in there. Moving into cleans from the ground, again, at 85%, you see we're 3x2 front squat. And again, we're driving intent on all these lifts. So again, just because you think, oh, it's going to be slow. No, like we drive intent. We're coaching aggression. We're coaching violence on every rep. I'm very fortunate to have 5 strength coaches in that room, including myself. We only have groups up to 25. So, I mean, I might only have 5 athletes. So we're coaching the hell out of these kids as far as from an intent, from getting that psychological advantage, getting them in the right mindset, and really driving that intent on all these strength exercises. So from a biomechanical standpoint, they should be on par. And then from a mental aspect of it, like we want them to attack these lifts. So again, you see the speed skater squats, again, very similar biomechanically to the kneel and start, sprinter bridge. And then you get into the Thursday, our performance day on Thursday, and we get power cleans. You see the lower intensity. So it's a higher speed. They're catching it in a power clean position versus a full squat. All right, because again, I'm stealing strength work, and I'm also cleaning up a lot of the catch positions with a full clean. I know a lot of people don't like full cleans. I love full cleans. I think it's really easy to go from a full clean to a power clean in your teaching progressions. I don't think it's the same as if you go from a power clean to a full clean. And then when we go to max day, everyone wants to drop anyway. And I think you could run at risk of getting injured. And then you get into some split jerks, and then some squats, 85%, 4x2, ton of volume. Because again, it's a high day and it's a high week, and then you get into trap bar deadlift 4x5 at 85%. Again, extremely high neural stimulus. Then you get some side squats, which are more specific, I guess you could say. And then one leg RDLs, because again, we did some maximum velocity running. So biomechanically, it's similar. We always finish up with some ab work. All right, and then you get into, all right, what do our support days look like? All right, our support days, again, we're going to mimic the stresses of the sport, and we're going to get them, my goal, and I stole this from Paul Jackson, full disclosure, my goal is to get them to adapt and thrive in practice, all right, because you win games in practice. So, what is practice? What does Indy, the demands of Indy look like? What do the demands of team look like? And they're not what we think they are, right? So again, I want to try to match that as much as humanly possible in my conditioning, and I want to try to accumulate as much high-speed yardage in my conditioning, and in my week overall, to match the stresses of a work week, right? So again, you see 30-yard shuttles, 5 back, 10 back, 2 sets of 16 reps, 40 seconds rest, 7 to 8, 7, 8, 9 are the times to make. All right, then you get into, RSA on Friday, 2 sets of 15, 7 seconds of work, and then 45 seconds worth of rest. Some that I didn't touch upon when I was talking about my volumes and intensities in the overall week. So like everything's tapered. So my big guys, they don't run 50 yards, they run 30 yards. So again, essentially you could take 3/4 the amount of all of our total running and jumping volume, and that's what's applied to our big guys, right? Because they're 300 pounds. There's no reason in the world, and then some of the modalities change too. There's no reason in the world to put them through the same type of jumping and exercise like that. That's how you're asking for injuries. Is their inertia, their own body weight is an extreme stress to them as they jump and run, and they just move, right? And then you get into what does it look like, on our support low days in the weight room. And again, bench, we use a lot of supersets, a lot of complex sets, just again to drive, and none of my workouts in the weight room are longer than 45 minutes. We're always driving tempo. I think it's a good way to build work capacity, specifically on these upper body days. So again, more restorative in nature. Charlie Francis touched on complex training all the time as a way to drive restorative processes. So again, but you can see, we usually pair a press with a row. And then I make sure that there's a balance between presses and rows, and then horizontal presses and vertical So planar too, so vertical versus horizontal. I try to make sure there's a good balance of that. And then you look at a lot of football players in general, or a lot of athletes in general nowadays, because how we sit, looking at the phone all the time, we're anterior dominant, So again, I try to throw in some extra posterior chain work, whether it be hamstring work, back work, whatever it is. We kill that upper back. I tell my guys all the time, it's like, you want to do extra work, come in and do 100 reps of back. Like you probably need it. You'll be all right for the next day, but you probably need it. And then you get into Friday, overhead press, which is one of my favorite exercises, just because of the coordination involved. And you pair that with a dumbbell row, and then you got dumbbell bench with pull-ups. So back machines, like I was talking about, and then every once in a while you got to give the kids what they want, right? And they want triceps, biceps, and big traps. Again, I tell them all the time, it's V-neck season, because I live in Florida. It's V-neck season year round, so we have some fun with it, and we give them what they want, and get some more buy-in, and they feel good walking out of the weight room. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, and then so again, how do we manage the stress to optimize recovery? Right. So we talked about how we prescribe it. Well, how do we monitor it? Right. So to me, training is testing. Testing is training. Okay, if you don't have testing built in to your training, you're not training. You're guessing. Okay, and how does it look like, right? What does that look like? And for us, it's real simple. We got stress at the top. We break down our 2 stresses, and then we look at, again, we have the resources that have GPS data. So again, we look at maximum velocity, again, that maximum heart rate. We look at maximum heart rate. We look at our total high speed yardage, and we look at our total IMA, which is any movement forward, backward, or side to side above 3 meters per second, right? And then from a training aspect, we look at our depth jumps. If we had VBT here, we look at that. We're in the process of acquiring that. And then we look at rate of RPE, we look at RPE, and, we ask them on specific exercise on specific days, what the RPE of the exercise was. If we do a heavy squat session, I want to know about it, what it looked like. All right. And then from a peripheral standpoint, you get into, again, the GPS, you get into total yardage, total load, and then average heart rate. Okay. So how is their body responding to the mechanical stress? Like, what does the internal stress look like to the outside stress? Right. And then from a training standpoint, we look at vertical jump, we get their body weights, we look at hydration via body weight. We're not doing any specific gravity urine testing or anything like that. And then we give them wellness questionnaires for them to take home, and for them to give us input on where they feel, how their bodies feel. Right. And then how do we test, right? How does that break down in a week? Right. So Monday, when we're warming up for cleans or whatever, just like Coach Moffitt talked about earlier in his presentation, is we just send our guys over. We have 2 just jump mats. There's usually an intern running it. We have them go over there. They hit 2 vertical jumps, and they do 2 depth jumps, and they do it from a 12-inch box to make sure that it's standardized. What's funny is, like, the first week we did it, the jumps weren't great, and then we posted them and we put them everywhere, and we ranked everybody, and all of a sudden, we had a 5% increase. So it's funny how intent really drove that. And then Monday, we also look at high-speed yardage, and then we just look at the top mile per hour, top velocity. Moving into Tuesday, we just look at the total yardage, all right, and then we look at the IMA and the body weight. Thursday is very similar to Monday, all right, except that we have testing data on our sprints. So we look at those also, whether it be a flying 10 or a 20-yard sprint or a 15-yard sprint. We're always comparing those. And then on Friday, we're looking again at total yards, IMA, body weight, and then we also take a peek at their high-speed yardage, considering that's a repeat sprint day. We want to make sure that, again, we're saying what we're doing as far as from that. And then you can see this is over the 8 weeks that we had. And you can see, again, the undulation that you see, and then the buildup of it is the first 2 weeks were kind of stagnant. 3rd week, they crept up a little bit. And then that week that we backed off allowed them to recover. And you were seeing the same thing. And we actually got cut off on week 7. So that actually is just the same as week 4. I don't know why that's in there like that. But they were you can see it almost mimics weeks 5 through 7. It almost mimics the undulation that we have from a volume standpoint. Right, and then you look at depth jump, same thing, right? Week 3, they're kind of in the gutter. Training was getting them. They bounced back week 4, and then week 5, and then you can see week 6 and week 7 kind of falling in that same realm. Where again, we're probably going to come back up week 8, and then again, just some more charts. We're looking at right here. We're looking at velocity bands to make sure that we're hitting specific numbers as far as from a mile per hour standpoint in our speed sessions, and then you can see that top red one that's above 18 miles an hour. So as we progress through the weeks, it increased again. So as we increase the intensity of our sprint drills, the amount of average distance covered at over 18 miles an hour increased. And then the same thing right here, velocity bands versus speed session versus total yardage. So you can see again, what is our total yardage One thing, just from an injury prevention standpoint, we all try to match. The total accumulated yardage, right? And what I found is if you get as close as possible to the total accumulated high-speed yardage, right? Because when do guys get hurt? They don't get hurt jogging. They get hurt sprinting. So if you can at least get them equipped to handle from a high-speed yardage, the total volume will be less of a burden as you get into camp and moving forward. And then you look at just total yards, period, from week to week, from day to day. And again, we're just trying to make sure that, we're saying we're doing what we're saying. Like, we're around in a ballpark range of what those volumes that we're prescribing are. And then again, weekly loads versus load density. Again, we want the density, even though our workouts are an hour, we want the density to be higher than a practice, right? Because then when they get into practice, the practice now duration might get them, but at least we know they can handle the intensity and intensity of the exercise or of the training session, right? I want to thank Matt. It's funny, things come full circle. Is me and Matt actually interned together, and I think it was 2012 at LSU. I think Matt was as green as they come. He just came off just out of college, and I just finished my GA, and we're both young. And so it's been awesome to see him, climb the ranks as I climb the ranks. And again, I just want to thank him for allowing me to be part of this. And then anybody that was associated with this, as far as from a sponsor standpoint or a speaker, this is a serious matter we're dealing with. Obviously, we're all in it together. I mean, you hear that all the time, and I appreciate all y'all and all the donors, the donations that have came in. Yeah, any questions? And then that's my contact information right there.
Joey, fantastic, buddy. Thank you very much. So we've got quite a few questions that we're not going to get through, but so you're happy to people to drop you an email and
absolutely
on social medias? Perfect.
Hold on. Do I need to share my screen again?
No, you can do. It might be useful, but I mean, people can drop you a message, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But there's a couple that I'd like to go through, if possible, over the last 5 minutes before I let you and everyone else dive off. The first one was Jordan Diaz. How do you come up with the maximum volume of sprint work in a mesocycle and microcycle? Is that again Charlie Francis influence?
Absolutely. So yeah. in a mesocycle, and it comes from, again, some trial and error over the years too. Also, I looked at it as, he's prescribing in a week, 800 meters. So again, a lot. And then we're talking about elite track athletes, right, that are trained at a high level. So for me, it was like, all right, let me start at half that, right? Let me start at half that and see what, again, if I look at them, they're elite. Our guys are novice at best. I might have a few guys that we could say, okay, this guy, he's a track guy. He comes in, runs 4.3, but majority of them are novices at best. So let me cut that in half and work from there. So again, with my mesocycles, all I do is I take that, so we moved it to 600 yards as my total for an entire week, 600 yards. So again, I just times that by 4. If I have a 4-week, now it would be times that by 3 if it was a 3-week block. You get what I'm saying? So again, 600 yards for my microcycle is going to be my highest. And then based on where I am in the training year, if I'm earlier in the training year, I'm only going to use 80% of that, right? I'm not going to go 100% off the bat. I'm going to use 80% of that and then build, and as I move through and navigate the annual calendar.
Nice, mate. So in terms of staying away from that medium zone that you talked about, are you timing all the sprints that the guys do, so you can then decide whether they should be finishing the session if there's some like residual fatigue in there? So if they're not hitting that threshold, you can reduce the volume.
So on Thursdays is when we time sprints.
Okay.
And again, there's been times where, you get a kid and he's fast and what he should be around. And off the top of my head, we had a kid named Justin McKitton. He ran a 2.65 in the 20, and he ran it 3 weeks straight. And then all of a sudden we go out there and he ran a 2.71. I'm like, whoa, like, was it coach error? Was it time error? What's the deal? And then you ran a 2.71 again. And I'm like, all right, we need to shut you down.
Yeah.
And it's, again, I think it's a science and an art. In the team setting, it's hard because, again, you pull a kid out and you got football coaches out there at that workout. What are they going to say to you? Like, oh, why are you being soft on him, this and that? But at the same time, I think we have a good relationship with our football coaches where they understand, it's about winning games on Saturdays in September, October, and November versus winning a Monday run, So, but you want to make sure kids are honest too, and they're not just BSing, because you get that too. But yeah, I definitely the timing of it, and I think it has more implication as far as prescription the following week. So if it's like a global thing, we're gonna modify what we do the following week, right? Or if it's just for him specifically, like all of his markers, because we're gonna look at his vertical jump, his depth jump, we're gonna look at his body weight. If all those start pulling up red flags, then yes, we'll modify for that individual specifically.
Yeah, nice. So just one last one before I let you go, because I know we're at time. A nice, easy one for you, hopefully. What VBT system do you plan on using and why versus others?
One we can afford.
Good answer.
You know, I've looked at, you know, VMAX Pro just came out with some pretty cool stuff. I had Push at Colorado State, and I thought the reliability of it was good. You know, obviously each system has its pros and cons. I've looked at just to going back to, because I can't afford GymAware, I can't afford Purge. Like I just don't have the budget for it, right? We're trying to buy peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for kids. So, you know, but I did like, I've been thinking about going back to just regular Tendos if we get the budget for it, just because it's the simplicity of it. You know, it's like, you know, you're a Moffitt hit on it a whole bunch. It's intensive because you're going to have an intern basically essentially writing down every number, but I mean, you make do.
Yeah, absolutely. Superb. Thanks, Joey. Really appreciate that. And anyone that wants to get in touch, drop your message on socials or email.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, mate.